Testing, testing.
All right, the time is now 7:03. I'll call the meeting to order. Can we mute? We got it? Looks like it. Okay. So we'll do a roll call vote. Adam Sheely here. Stephanie Butenhoff.
Here.
Sue Kradowitz.
Here.
Michael Saad is absent. Corey Bees.
Here.
Okay. So please stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'll seek a motion to approve our agenda as presented.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, let's do roll call votes. Adam, aye. Stephanie?
Aye.
Sue?
Aye.
Mike is absent. Corey?
Aye.
All right. Motion carried 4-0. That moves us to our facility planning. So I will have Jack present that for us.
Sure. With our two agenda items tonight, the first is Mrs. Lisa Voisin from Baird Financial. She'll be going over what her and her colleagues call Referendum 101, and just a little bit of kind of a background and what it would look like for Bristol School financially if we move forward with the referendum. So I will go ahead and present my screen here, Lisa, if you want to. It's going to.
Hey, do you mind taking this off to present? You're okay?
I have to pull this up first.
Hello, everyone. Good to see brand new faces, actually. My name is Lisa Voisin. I'm from Robert W. Baird. We're a financial firm headquartered in Milwaukee. We work with about 80% of the school districts in the state on financial topics, borrowing money for facility projects, school budget forecasting, all kinds of things. I've been doing this for 33 years. Started when I was 10. Been at Baird for 33 years. And I also was on the school board in Muskego. So I served a term on the school board, and I kind of know what it's like to be on your side of the table when you have somebody coming up and presenting. So what I'm going to do, and I've been through about 225 school facility referendums throughout that time, and I'm just going to hit the highlights. So I'm going to hit highlights that I think is important for you to know related to the financing and the finances of the district and how we've prepared and kind of set you up. I've been working with this district way back in the day with Gail and some of those early referendums. We've worked together over the years, and Susan as well at our previous district. I've also worked with a lot of areas surrounding districts. I've been with Scotia and Paris and Salem I'm working with right now. So got a familiarity a little bit with the area. So while he's getting this,
I'm sorry, Lisa. We're getting in here.
So the first question that you're going to get asked is, why can't you pay for all these projects in your budget? Like, why are you coming to the electors? Why are you asking the voters to vote on this? Why can't you just use your budget dollars? And so my first slide really talks about, it really depends on what you're talking about. So what are you talking about? Are you talking about funding a boiler? Well, yeah, if you have to buy a new boiler, you can fund that out of your budget, right? Is it a new roof or HVAC? Yeah, maybe you could do that. But when you start getting into those larger projects or deferred maintenance has been pushed off for a long time, you're not gonna be able to fund that out of your budget. You know, you guys are limited on your revenue. The state limits how much revenue you can bring in. So the answer to the question when you're pouring in the grocery store and somebody says, why can't you just pay for this out of your budget, or why haven't you? Well, you've been educating kids. You're using that limited revenue to educate kids, right? We're not, actually in Muskego, I think we had about $300,000 a year budget for the windows, carpeting, small projects. But again, when you're talking about the bigger projects, you're not gonna be able to fund that out of some specific funds. So if you skip to the next, so that's kind of what I'm talking about, like just knowing what your priorities are, and you guys are gonna be working with this team back here, talking about priorities, and kind of prioritizing your priorities, right? And coming up with kind of a project. So if we skip to the next slide, I'm gonna just briefly go over two ways to fund projects. So again, we're talking about items that you're gonna be talking about later. And again, out of your annual budget, we just talked about that. Sometimes that budget's tight, out of fund balance. If you have a strong fund balance, some districts use that money to pay for a roof or to pay for new carpeting. But again, getting into those millions of dollars, not so much. There's a Fund 46, I believe you guys have one. That's a kind of a maintenance fund, kind of stashing money away for projects. Again, smaller. When you get to the larger fund, the larger projects, you're gonna be borrowing money. If the district borrows money to a large amount, they're gonna have to go to referendum. There is a one way to borrow money that's not going to referendum, which you guys took advantage of. When you funded with Heather, I don't remember what it was like an under $1 million borrowing, yeah.
Mhm.
So that was using this $1 million exemption, so the state allows you to borrow money and just pay these budget dollars. You're not gonna be borrowing $20 million and using budget money, so that's why we have to go to the referendum. Okay, so that kind of answers that question. Next slide talks a little bit about the tax levy. So the next question you're gonna get, and really, I think really the crux of this whole project and what you're talking about tonight is what is it gonna do with my taxes? You guys as a board probably know this, but I'm gonna remind you of how to understand that and communicate it to your taxpayers. So first and foremost, you have a tax levy. This is projected for this fall, so $4.5 million. Part of that is that revenue limit we just talked about. These are your budget dollars. This is money that's coming in from taxes, and then you also have a chunk that comes in from state aid. Those two numbers are 80% of your revenue, sometimes 90%. That's not what we're talking about tonight. If you wanted to exceed that or bring in more operational dollars, we'd be talking about an operational referendum. You've heard non-recurring and recurring referendums. Oh, you guys have done that. Good job, you're one of the 12% of the districts in the state that haven't yet. But if you needed more money to operate, this is the referendum question you would be asking. We're talking about facilities, so we're talking about principal and interest payments on a loan. That's what this is, your referendum debt, okay? Total tax levy, $4.5 million. Again, doesn't really mean much to a common taxpayer. Okay, levy $4.5 million, what does that mean to me? Next slide shows you the math. Super easy to calculate. You take $4.5 million, your total levy, divided by all the property value of the school district. The total levy divided by property value in the school district gives you what's called a mill rate. I'm not sure if you guys have heard mill rate, but you're gonna hear it a lot.
Next
The
week
math
for
is
sure.
easy. So here is $4.88. That's Bristol School's mill rate. We use mill rate for two reasons. One, to calculate your taxes. It's simple math. You move the decimal over 2, and that's how much taxes the K-8 on a $100,000 property. So if your mill rate's $4.88, just move the decimal over 2. And $488 is on my tax bill for the K-8. Now we have the high school district. We have the high school district as well, right? You have the county and you have the city and the technical college. All those come on your tax bill. We're talking about the school tax bill. So your mill rate that we're projecting for this fall, it's not finalized, is somewhere around 48. We're waiting for some final numbers yet. So when you see mill rate, move the decimal over 2, and that's taxes on $100,000 homes. So the next slide, I don't know why it's not coming out, is showing how, maybe a different version of actually. It's showing how you compare to your neighbors. And for Bristol, you guys are right in the middle. So you've got a couple districts, Brighton and Paris, that are lower, and you've got a couple of districts, Cleveland and Salem, that are higher. So just looking at the area K8s, you guys are kind of right in the middle, just a touch above state average. And again, this is last year. This is 2021, not 488 will get you down. We can send them the hard copy of this so you can get the actual graphic. It's not showing up right here. But think about it, Paris and Brighton just failed the referendum for facilities. And Paris doesn't have any debt. And neither does Brighton. So that's why their mill rates are lower. They have no debt. You guys have debt. And a nice facility for the most part to show for it, right? You've got this whole location. So again, I think that's great that you're right in the middle of the road. And then also mill rate, I like to look at mill rate historically too, like where have you been in the past? So that's the next slide. Hopefully, still didn't show up, but this is basically where your mill rate's been. It's been flat, and we're just dropping down a little bit this year. Great job board, great job administration. You've been able to hold the line on your mill rate, hold the line on taxes, and really you've set yourself up for a potential new borrowing because now we've dropped and we can fit in. I think that's down the ways. It's a couple more slides, but we can fit in a new borrowing really nicely with a minimal tax. Okay, so let's talk about your debt for a minute. So with this 488, all of your referendum debt will be paid off. You gotta be proud of that, and that's something that when we talk to the community, when we get our informational campaign going, we're gonna let them know that we have prepaid debt over the past couple of years. That's how we've been able to keep this mill rate steady. Because every time it would drop, we fill it in with a little bit more debt, prepaid, and save X dollars. I don't have X. I don't know exactly. I'll figure that out though before we, get out for the informational campaign. So as board members, be proud. You've kept the mill rate flat, and it dropped a little. That'll be part of the informational campaign too. We want the community to know. But then the next slide shows what your current debt situation is. This is the one that will be paid off. The remaining balance is $800. That's the 2014 referendum. So we paid it off in 7 years. 8 years. In 8 years, a 20-year bond has been paid off. Something very proud of. This small borrowing, this is the Fund 38 that you guys did last year for, I can't remember what the project was.
1-to-1 was a big part of it. Technology 1-to-1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is $633,000. This debt is being paid for by your budget. You didn't go to voters for this debt.
Roof,
But-
parking lot roof.
Yeah, that sounds more.
Mhm.
Yeah, parking lot. So what I would say to taxpayers, if you get corn in the grocery store, is that we have a little bit of debt outstanding, and our balance is about $633,000, and we borrowed it under 1.1%. It's very cheap debt. So again, a district your size would typically have more debt. So the fact that you're very low is great. So the next slide. I wonder if you have.
Is it the
version.
colors or the what's not showing
No,
up?
I think it might be because you have a different version of PowerPoint. Sometimes this happens to me, and I'll.
Google doesn't like PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Oh, is it a Mac?
No, it's probably we're presenting in Google Slides, so it's probably the difference.
Oh, that is it.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. So you can see this. Yeah, all it is your historical mill rate. Do you have it on your screen? No, okay.
It looks like that on our screen.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. All it is your historical mill rate. We've talked about that. It's flat. Now it's broken out into two pieces, right?
I don't know why it's doing that though.
And you can see when the 488 drops, you're filling in that yellow, which is the debt. That's all I wanted to say. So the increase right now is we're projecting for a $20 million borrowing. The increase in your mill rate over last year, over 21-22, is 30 cents.
we're 488, that'll bring us up to 518. Okay. What were we prior to paying off that?
585.
Okay, thanks so much.
So even with the new referendum, you're gonna be below where you
Well,
guys were messaging. That's all when we start working on the invite. Keep pointing you guys because when we put the information pieces together, it's huge. And even in the survey,
Just went last year.
survey has this, so they'll know. No, it's a great story, 30 cents. So let me quiz you, what's 30 cents? Something you told the taxpayers, we borrowed $20 million, it's 30 cents on the mill rate, how much would it be on a $100,000 home? The decimal over 2, so $30. So if I own a $100,000 property in Bristol, my tax bill will increase K-8 school portion by $30 in a year. To me, that seems low. I've been doing this for a long time. Some of my tax impacts range from 0 to I think $2.22 in Melrose. So the higher end, when you start getting up into an increase in the mill rate of $1 or $2, it starts getting higher.
But it's still cheaper than 2021.
And what was the, I just want to make sure everybody heard you say what the borrow,
585. Oh,
like how much money, at what number is the referendum of that 30 cents?
okay. So let's go to the next slide because I think this graph.
I know. I don't think they heard that. Here we go.
20 million, 30 cents on the mill rate, $30 on a $100,000 home, $2.50 a month on your mortgage payment, increase over what you paid last year. Conservative. I was gonna say super conservative, but it's conservative. You guys know back there, I like to be conservative. It's conservative. I'm not gonna lie, but I don't know what is going to be happening by next June with interest rates. Right now, it's steady, very steady. I don't know if this so, but interest rates are in that low 2% range, and it's been that way for several months. Just in the last 2 weeks, we're seeing it creep. People keep saying Q4, first quarter next year, we're going to see increases. So I have to be conservative. I'm using a 3.25% interest rate right now. If we get to a point where you guys decide it's going to be 22 million, I'm going to revise. Once you have a dollar amount, this is just ballpark right now. Once you have a dollar amount, we're going to fine tune this. And hopefully, before the survey would go out, this would be fine too. But I just want to give you an idea, what is 20 million? So anytime you add $1 million to this, you're going to add 6 cents. All right. 6 cents. You add to the mill rate when you add $1 million to that. So 21 million, 36 cents. Okay. So again, right now it's preliminary. It's estimated. It factors in a couple of things. 1, 3.25. 2, state aid. You get aided on your debt payments. Actually, yeah. A small amount of aid will come back to the district on your new debt payments. So we factored that in. And even more importantly is this whole tax incremental financing district closure. I don't know how you guys, you're nodding, so that means you're aware of it. I don't normally bring these to the attention of boards because the only time I bring it to your attention is when it's going to be closing soon. So in Slinger, it was like the perfect storm. TIF closed and they borrowed their $30 million. And it was just a perfect storm because they could add on this tax levy without being a burden. When a TIF closes, it adds property value to the district. And the people, whatever's in that TIF, if it's a Walmart, which is what we have in Muskego, taxes they pay are now going to school. For the last 20 years, Walmart's taxes were going to the city. And the city was using to pay off the debt because they had to borrow and put all the infrastructure into Walmart. So that's how kind of a just basic TIF works. Is the city borrows money, well, who's going to pay it back? Well, all the companies that move into that district pay taxes. They don't go to the school for 20 years, or 27 years. They go to the city, and the city will bill it. Once they pay their debt off from all the infrastructure they put in, then you get the tax. You guys are coming to the end of the, is this the through line? Yeah, the U-line tip. So, and I'm a big fan of tips, especially when they're closing. It's just gonna help you guys. It really is. People ask me all the time, in the beginning when they just start, it's like, it doesn't really affect you. You're still gonna get taxes on that base land value, but 20 years later, and that's what the next slide is. Oh, here we are. So this is tip number 2. We're thinking it's gonna be closing. We're in contact with the village. And you guys may know more than I do about this, but we're thinking it's gonna be closing in July of 23. That means the value will be added to the school in 24. So you'll have a huge increase in your tax base or the valuation in 24. Which, what does that do? If you remember the formula, it's levy divided by value. If you have an increased value, your mill rate's gonna drop. And we'll plan for that, we'll forecast. I'm not worried right now about it, but you guys need to know that's happening because it's gonna help you. I mean, think about it. Blue Line is gonna start in school tax and they're gonna absorb some of this project. I also don't mention this if the tip isn't that big. So Johnson Creek, there's a mall there, like a quarter of the school district. The tip is huge. That mall is huge. So when that closed, it had a huge impact. So that's something you have to plan for. I think this is gonna be pretty big too, because you're talking $257 million added to your tax base, which is it's a big chunk. In fact, the next slide will show you that. Go to the next slide. Yeah, so the next slide, it didn't show up here, okay. This was just a sliver on the last slide. When the tip closes, you're gonna add quite a bit more, $257 million. So I could sit there and do all the math and tell you what it means to your mill rate, but there's so many unknowns right now, I'm not gonna do that. Just want you guys to know that this is happening and we're factoring it in when we're doing our financing plan and tax impact, okay? So we're thinking, we've got that in the back of our mind again because it is so large. Does that make sense?
That property value is now included in our Bristol tax revenue.
Not yet.
I'm not now,
Yeah.
but yeah, when it closes, correct, yes, thank you.
Yeah, we'll just plan for that because a couple of things will happen and we can mitigate because it'll be like a peak and valley situation with your mill rate. We can mitigate that. I'm not worried about what we do. So, this is so funny. How Google changes the graphics, but the topic is whatever we're going to talk about. So, what we wanted to do, what we want to talk about here is that the state of Wisconsin limits the amount of debt you can have. Only if this question comes up, because you're not going to hit your debt limit. Your debt limit is $60 million. You're not going to do it. But know that that's the maximum amount of debt you can have. That's all. There is a limit, and not many districts hit that limit.
We're up to these guys.
So that's 2020. Okay, so last couple slides that I was going to take 20 minutes. Just understanding, this is the data on your last referendum. Another question you're going to get asked by the community: did we just go to referendum? Did we just build that? I mean, you're already So get the facts. 2013 is when you went to referendum. You asked for 5.3 million. It passed. You guys know what it built. But before that, you guys did. It was 01 that you went. And I remember when we went in 2013, how important it was to the board have a no impact referendum. They did not want to increase their debt payments, and we didn't. We basically backed into how much they could borrow to keep their debt payments flat. So there might be questions as to why we only built this or only built that or didn't have this or didn't have that. A lot had to do with the board's decision during that time frame, 2012, 2013, to say, keep it, we're not increasing our debt payment. And administration too, Neil was adamant about that. So I just wanted to give you that insight. Another question would be, what did your neighbors do? Like, that's the next slide. And I'm not going to go through all this, but you'll have this information. We'll send this out to you so you have it. But Brighton just failed. All the rest that have gone, Central Scotia, passed. Salem, had a non-recurring referendum. That was the other side of that tax levy, operational side. They wanted to get more dollars. In fact, I think they're going to be going again.
Yep.
Union Grove issued debt. I helped them with that, $8 million. Wheatland, and so on. So just knowing what your neighbors are doing is super important because that'll be the talk. I'm sure Greg will be. There will be some discussion around that as well. You may know the next slide too. The next slide is election date. So you flip to the next
Yeah,
slide.
it just takes a second. Once I hit it, it takes a few seconds for it to pop up there.
Next slide is not election date. And then again, not showing up real clear, but what I'm trying to show you here, because this is always a question from the board, not necessarily from the community, but like when's the best time to go to referendum? What has the highest pass statistics? And there's only 4 opportunities: February, April, August, and November. Primary, general, primary. Even years, that's 22. This year there's nothing in fall. So odd years there's no fall election. But most districts, there's a lot of districts that go in November. It's the most popular, and it does have the highest pass percentage. So know that November is the best month from a statistics standpoint to go to referendum. It's always had the highest success, especially presidential election. The last gubernatorial election was a record passage rate for referendums in Wisconsin. But they're just statistics. That's why I don't really like talking about this much, because you go when you're ready. You go when you are ready. When you have an informed community, knows what they're voting on, understands what's on that ballot. That's when you go to referendum. So if it takes a year, it takes a year. If it takes 6 months, however much time it's going to take you, that's when you go. So don't really fall back too much on statistics. But I get that question all the time, so I'll show the slide. These are the dates. So again, for 2022, you're going to February or April, you're going to have August or November. August, I always do, nobody goes in August because everybody's on vacation, right? It's not a good time to go to referendum. So there's really 3 opportunities. But what the board needs to know, you guys may know this already, that 70 days in advance of the referendum date is when you have to adopt 2 resolutions. One is saying we're going to referendum in April, and the other one is giving a not to exceed amount. It's 20 million, whatever that dollar amount is, along with the purpose language. So what are you borrowing the money for? That's super important. Drafted by bond attorneys. You guys are not going to have to worry about putting the ballot together. And we have really good bond attorneys who know what they're doing. They'll be all encompassing, and it'll be great. What I do ask the board to do is to preview that before the formal adoption. So if you're adopting mid-January, get that ballot language in front of you, review it the December board meeting. Okay, so, and we'll talk more about that. And then the next slide is really the example ballot language. And again, it's a not to exceed dollar amount. You cannot borrow more than whatever's on the ballot. It's rounded to the nearest 5,000. The bonds are issued in $5,000 blocks. We know that, so we'll work together on that. And the purpose language is yours. And you guys will draft it, but if you guys own it. When I was in Mosquito, they wanted in the question the intersection of Highway L and whatever it was. They wanted that in the so they wanted to be that specific about where we were going to build the elementary school, which failed, but that's what they want. So you can get super specific, but then you risk something changing afterwards. So we typically keep it very broad and general. So, and we'll dive more, deeper into that. So, just some additional thoughts, having been through this many times. I don't know I think there might be a few elephants here in the room, but I just tell you a quick story about a K we worked with that. The superintendent got up and gave a 20-minute presentation. So this was during the informational campaign, which was after the board decided on the dollar amount. He got up, he said, this is what we're doing, we're gonna remodel our cafeteria and all. It was a great 20-minute presentation. But at the end, somebody stood up and said, how many kids do we have open enrolling in this district? And he said, half the district is open enrolling in. So we had 100 kids coming in, particular districts and he had 100 resident kids. Well, for 2.5 hours, that's all we talked about was open enrollment. He was trying to explain that, well, it brings in $1 million in revenue and we wouldn't have a school if we didn't have the kids. And he was really trying. Attention to this line. Nice presentation. Elephant in the room. Address it. Get it out there. Get a message. Maybe yours is, the last referendum, or I don't know what it is, but we got a message around that, and bullet points, stick with them, same thing, repeat your bullet points, it's so important, because that referendum went down, maybe not because of that, but I know it's a very bad community that said, we're not paying for kids that are coming in from other districts, even though they didn't realize, so, that's just one comment, there's other thoughts to think about that I wanted to respecting your time. I promised it was 20 minutes and I went over, so.
All right.
I'll pause, see if there's any questions, further clarification. We'll make sure you guys get the actual slide decks so that you can see the graphics better.
And I have Lisa's presentation, so I can always just print that too, so.
Yeah.
And give it to the board.
Yeah.
Didn't come up the greatest there.
I think the big key is the savings from 1920 or 2021 to current. Because initially
Be working with you along the way, and I can always come back. If you start working with a community group, a lot of times I'll do a similar, maybe a scaled down version of this to community facility advisory committee or whatever. Or informational campaign.
I have mine.
I can come back to, so just let me know, and I want to get the savings, the interest cost savings from prepaying that. I'm gonna get that. So that's tomorrow.
thank you very much. So much.
All right, thank you. All right, that's going to move us on to 5B, Nexus Solutions Facilities Assessment of Bristol School District. So, Jack, if you'd like to introduce the gentlemen that are here for us.
Yeah, we have 4 gentlemen from Nexus Solutions here tonight. We have Hans, Jeff, Mike, and Chris, all of which I have worked with very closely in the last year and a half now. Obviously a little bit closer in the last few months with my new position, but this is kind of our dream team. These guys will have all pretty much everything laid out for us as far as what our facilities improvements will look like, from the financial side to the physical side to the educational adequacy side. And they're going to go through the report with us tonight, and in much more detail than we probably ever have in the past. And we'll then take some questions and have a discussion along with it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff. Are you going to start? Or okay, I'll turn it over to Jeff Mangan from Nexus.
Thanks, Jack, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us back. Back to the March meeting, which is all virtual, as you presented the comprehensive analysis, or essentially the report you have in front of you. Gave you an overview, and then we promised to come back and review the report in detail for infrastructure and educational adequacy. And that's the purpose of tonight's meeting. We're still getting set up over here. Anyways, the facility improvement measure summary is one of the key documents where we consolidate all the recommended building improvements for both categories. Hans and Chris are going to be going through those, and we're going to try to keep it in a format where we explain the problem, the proposed solution, and the resulting benefit. So by the end, you'll have a really good understanding of the building needs in their totality. It's kind of fun in a masochistic way. I think some people are surprised at the end that you arrive at a very comprehensive understanding of what this building really needs. So with that, are we going to jump right to the FIMSOM?
Are you hearing okay?
Yeah, I can hear
I just want
you.
to say either Hans can unmute or we can just leave Adam like there. Either way will work. I just don't want to get, you gotta click the screen feedback. But
Yes, Corey was over on about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then
We do have extra reports. I think everybody's got one, but yes.
Thank you.
I'm muted, so.
Hans is up. I can hear it. Oh, you want to say something? Sorry.
So again, this is one of the planning tools, the FIMSOM, as we refer to it, categorize the two types of improvements. The first being infrastructure, second being educational adequacy. And we'll explain how the documents work. And then we'll also touch on the cash flow, I believe, as well. So with that, I'll turn things over to Hans.
Sure. So we got a lot to go through. We could probably be here for 3 hours, but we're not going to do that. We're going to try and do this in an hour. But that said, if we gloss over something quickly, stop. Tell us to stop, and we can get into it in more detail.
And just the same, if we're going too deep, tell us to pull up a little bit, okay?
This is a little bit what you guys saw was that, 4 weeks ago. So I'm going to skip through some of this. Jeff went through that comprehensive planning, kind of how we got to where we're at. I think if there's no comments, questions on this, I'm going to keep going. Staff survey. I don't know if you guys remember, we started this process by interviewing the staff. It's not solely, where we got. Obviously, there's a technical reasons, but we wanted to hear your staff out. Again, I'm not going to go through the responses. I think we've gone through this a couple times. What I do want to spend 2 minutes on is just talking about establishing some of the needs that we heard. Improve wayfinding through the building, right? I think you guys have been in this building enough. You know that it's a little bit of a maze. Cafeteria size and layout. We need to reduce the crowding. Improve the food serving process. Again, it's a small serving line, so that can help with the throughput. Improve underutilized spaces. There's a couple spaces within this building that are poorly utilized, and that kind of ties back to the fifth from the bottom. When I get down there, planning for future growth, this building is getting tight. But if we utilize spaces better, as we've shown, we don't have to have major additions, right? And that saves a lot of money, saves the taxpayers money, saves the school money. Provide large group instruction areas. There's a need within this building for all staff meetings, for departmental meetings, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Support staff collaboration, enhance flexibility. These aren't one and the same, but similarly allowing for flexible areas for different types of learning for both students, different types of teaching and collaboration for staff. Improve safety and security. You guys do have a good safe visitor entry. There's some better processes that we'd like to apply here. I talked about the future growth, correct humidity issues, roof leaks, and then traffic circulation within the buildings. Let's see if I can move this. Any comments or questions on that? Okay, let's get in.
Anything that we missed from your perspective? Is that list all encompassing from the board's perspective and what you've heard from your constituents during this process?
I think it's hard because, hold on, I forget the mute button a lot.
I think it's hard because
Just like at home in the house, right? If your AC goes out, but it's the middle of winter, you don't necessarily think about it because you're not utilizing it and it's behind the walls. it's not as apparent as the leaky roof that is putting the waterfall in the nurse's office. So I think the boiler situation, okay, we're still getting heat. They're not seeing though that it's not the most efficient way for us to be doing this and costing us more money. So I think that is more some of the harder sell areas compared to our cafeteria, which you can clearly see is overcrowded.
Okay, thank you.
The question I had, were you guys able to look into the air quality or the water quality in our school?
Hans, that was directed towards you.
Please repeat.
The water quality and air quality in our school?
Certainly the air quality, you'll see, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Water quality comes from the city. Obviously, there's an effect on the existing pipes, and we will affect some of that because I'm sure there's some galvanized piping within the building. But there's not a single, what I call BIM, building improvement measure, facility improvement measure that addresses piping. But as a totality of the project, there will certainly be opportunities to get rid of that galvanized piping. What I handed out, I can project that also. This is, again, what's called the FIM summary. This is what we really want to spend, probably the next 20 minutes on this and walk through this. You guys have the books. You've had a chance to read through them. This is an update of the financials that are in the back of the books. Since we passed these books, you got these books back in March, I believe it was. You know, we've had a chance to do some reiterative sessions with your teachers. A lot of what I call the infrastructure items have not changed. You'll see that, but a lot of the educational adequacy items have changed. So we'll talk about those changes when we get there. But what we wanted to spend some time is allow you guys to really understand each individual line item. So again, as Mike said, you know, if I'm too high, tell me to move on. If I go too fast, stop me. So I want to go through these one by one. This looks like a lot of information. It is a lot of information. Trust me that when we're done here in an hour, you guys will be pros at this. If you're not comfortable with it, we can do another session. We're happy to do that. But I think we're going to go through this methodically over the next 20 minutes here, next 40 minutes, and I think you'll grasp it pretty quickly. So, starting from left to right, I want to just tell you the layout of this. First item is the selected projects. So I'll talk about it a little bit more in a second, but ultimately, if there's an X in the row, it totals at the bottom. Okay, so we've got each one of these line items has a savings, a utility savings, an O&M savings, a cost. The costs are off to the right, which we'll talk about for informational, but they don't total up at the bottom unless they have an X by them, and we'll come back to that. FIM number is just our own nomenclature. Report number, obviously it ties it back to the report. So if you're reading through this and you say, what is this main gym? You can go to page 11 and read about it, read about the issue, the solution, and the benefits. Obviously, next category is just a brief description of the FIM. The next section is our savings. First item is utility savings. So that's gas, electricity, water. Obviously, those are true budget reducing savings where we were doing energy efficiency improvements. That money can be put back into the project to pay for the project. Second item is O&M savings, operations and maintenance. So we did an analysis over the last 3 years of your school's funding on outside vendors. This isn't in-house staff. This is outside vendors, outside services. So it's reasonable to think on this first line item, which is VAS. I believe you guys spent about $4,000 on average on VAS. If we're going to replace half of that, it's reasonable to think that you're not going to spend $4,000 year in, year out. In this case, we were conservative and said you were going to save about $970, right? Same with the roof, right? We've got, you've spent $5,000 annually. We see that you're spending $5,000 annually on roof repairs. Well, if you replace your worst case roof, your oldest roof, and you replace the next half, which is what we're proposing to do here, it's reasonable to think you're going to spend less over the next several years. So that's money that can go, instead of paying out to outside vendors, can go back and pay for these projects. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Next item is annual cost and avoidance. This is a little bit softer. And what this is we want to quantify items that are like inflation. There's a cost for not doing the work because the work gets more expensive as we move forward. There is staff efficiency. Obviously, if we go through and replace lamps, if we replace air handling units, that's less of lose staff time that you need to be spent on it. Now, you're not going to let folks go. So that's why it's soft savings, but it's tangible, potentially tangible money that we want to recognize and acknowledge. So, but that does not go to paying for it, but it's something that we don't want to lose sight of. So next column's total savings. It just adds those up. Next column, I'm on total project budget. Again, this is the cost. This is the budget cost to do each one of these individual lines of work. This is all in. We've got a lot of clients, school clients, that like the way we do it because we're different from other folks that will come in and a contractor will say, okay, it costs $80,000 to do this, and then you end up getting a bill for $120,000. They say, well, that didn't include the engineering fees, that didn't include the construction management, that didn't include the bonding. This is what it'll cost you, right?
Do we also build in for flux? Because we know prices over the last 2 years have kind of changed quite a bit.
Yep. We've got a little bit of that built in there. We've got contingency built in there. So obviously, just using round numbers, if we've got $20 million worth of project is what we're showing, a portion of that will be bid out contractor costs. A portion of that will be engineering fees, construction fees, contingency, general conditions. So that's all built in here. So know that that's how we operate. Funding sources. In this case, on the next three columns, we've got three funding sources. We've got project savings. That means if there's energy savings component to it, that can be funded with the energy savings. If they're capital fund, you'll see we don't have anything in here for capital fund. That'd be in case you guys say, well, you know what, we can put $2 million in this, $200,000 in that, and fund a couple of these. And maybe we choose to do that here, but when we get to it, I don't think we'll want to, or we'll need to, excuse me. Referendum then is going to fund the rest of it. And you'll see how this rolls up when we get to the end. So I spent a little bit of time kind of showing the layout. Let's get into the good stuff here. We've categorized this into mechanical, electrical, exterior deferred maintenance on this first page. First item is your BAS system. You've got half of the building here is Siemens, an older Siemens system. The other half is an Andover system. That Siemens systems is on the fritz. You could talk to Tony and Lou. That's not working right now. We know that. This cost would be to replace that system, get it onto one single system, monolithic system that all talks, improve efficiency, improve your maintenance team's efficiency. Next item, heating water system. You've got two heating water system, boiler systems. You've got one in the Hvac wing. You've got another one that's an older one from 95 that serves 95, the 1968 portion. That has three boilers. There's a picture of it up there. Those guys have at the end of their life. So we would propose to replace those three boilers with two new boilers, two larger boilers, of course. MS3 is a 6th and 8th grade wing. I think we've talked about this a lot. Those are served by unit ventilators. Those are the units. Again, I've got a picture of that on the floor. We want to rip those out, patch that in, go to a traditional overhead air system, improve the humidity control, frankly, improve indoor air quality. MS4, gym entrance, door number 1. Now, this is the first one that's not checked in. What this is that your gym lobby and that door over there, there's no ventilation. It's just heated by, unit heaters. And that's not, I don't know how that got approved when it got built. That stuff, this stuff happens. The reason why I don't have it checked in is you wouldn't do it. You guys aren't actively teaching class in there. You don't need to do it. Certainly if a code official came in here, they could certainly bring it up. It's not likely to happen. But know that I've got a note in here. We've got a note that says if we move forward with the remodel that we're proposing, we would have to provide a rooftop unit to provide proper ventilation for that space. So it's built in to our later remodels. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
IMC, that's this area. Again, there's unit ventilators. You can't see them here because they're all out above the ceiling out in the hallway, and they provide air here. I think there are 5 or 6 of them. I have to look at the plans exactly again. Again, we look to get rid of those, go to a single overhead air handling system. Saves money, reduces the amount of equipment that needs maintenance, upgrades the entire system. MS 6, 7, 8, and 9, they all serve the oldest wing, the what I call the K through third grade wing. Couple different options here. At minimum is MS 6, where we would just replace the VAV boxes. The VAV boxes are small unitary devices at each room that they control in individual rooms. That's what the thermostats will address that. They don't go to the big air handling unit, the source equipment. That air handling was replaced as part of the Hvac wing. I think once it was built, there was a little extra money, if I remember right. I was actually walking through the building then, and he was telling me that they were doing that work. So that's why we're not proposing to do that air handling unit, because it is newer. At that time, MS7 potentially replaced ductwork and diffusers. I mean, we're up there replacing, 25-year-old VAV boxes. It's probably prudent to replace the ductwork and diffusers. Again, certainly we're going to talk about the remodel of that area. Certainly it would be prudent we're going to have to replace all that ductwork then if that goes through. So that needs to be in here. MS8 is the office in that area. That air handling unit was not replaced as part of that, and was at 2013. So we're proposing to replace that along with the VAV boxes. Then MS9 is really the first and second, the two-story edition. That's got a different unit on it. It's got duct board instead of sheet metal ductwork. It's duct board. It's a pretty cheap, flimsy. I don't know if it's in some residential applications where they basically just it's basically styrofoam it's not styrofoam. I'm not giving enough credit, but it's basically it's an insulated board that they fold up in a square, and it's brittle. It wears down. It's not metal, right? So we want to get that removed and replaced, and that's in that first and second story, what I call the 70s edition. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. The gym. 2 improvements there, replacing the ERU, that's the energy recovery unit, that's past its useful life, that's up on the roof. Number 2, we heard that unit is very noisy, so we want to get sound attenuators on there. That's an inline in the duct that will help reduce the noise from the unit itself. 12, this is a pretty standard one. You've got 10 general exhaust fans that serve bathrooms, janitor's closet throughout the building. They could probably be replaced by your maintenance team, but again, as economies of scale, if we're here doing all that mechanical work, it would be prudent to do that now when we're up on the roof. Not something that has to be done, but we would recommend including it. Data room, you've got 3 IT rooms. They are not cooled, so we want to get those cooled moving forward. Obviously, that's a critical part of the school. Luckily, Tony hasn't had too many problems, but we want to be proactive on that. MS14 is HVAC system optimization and retro commissioning. So when we replace, it's natural that controls are the heart of the building, and valves and dampers all eventually go out of whack, right? They need to be reset. We usually do retro commissioning every 5 to 10 years, depending on. So in this case, we're obviously replacing about half your control system. We want to do that then, and then we want to go back and retro commission the controls that we're not part of. So we make sure everything's working properly. We don't have areas cooling and other areas heating at the same time. It's a very thorough process. When we find equipment, thermostats that don't work, temperature sensors that don't work, we find sequences that aren't set up right, we get that corrected so your building's operating most efficiently.
I have a quick question there. It's technology based, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're learning already with our Chromebook edition when we kind of had everything all at once, and then it all needed to be updated at once, and now we're in a phased approach and we're not doing that again. What is the likelihood of all this starting to fail at the same time?
It is technology. I would say it should last 15 years, okay, at least. I wouldn't expect it to go out of date in 10 years. There's software updates, but the hardware will go out of date, just like you said, like Chromebooks and computers go. But I wouldn't put it in the same category as computers and that type of stuff. I mean, a good example is this is 2000. Some of this controls that we're replacing is from 2013 projects. So some of it's 8 years old, and some of the controls that we replace is part of the 1996 project. So some of that stuff lasted quite a bit longer and is limped along. So
okay. Just trying to think future budget wise.
Yeah,
That's all.
I think that's a reasonable question, and you're right. It's certainly not gonna last 25 years, but I would expect it to last at least 10, if not 15 years. Next couple items, I'm gonna go through these a little bit quicker. Plumbing, we found a lot of sinks and toilets that are not sensor operated, so they could potentially get left on. They're high flow. We'd recommend replacing those with sensors. In the kindergarten areas, that some of them, the flush, there were some where there are sensors, they're up too high for the kids, so get those corrected. 18's adding a fire protection system to the building, and it's checked in now. Again, we would not add a fire protection system if we're not going to look at this overall remodel of the building. But if we're going to remodel, 40% of the building like we're proposing, this would be the time to add an overhead sprinkler system. And frankly, it allows us to be more flexible in our design, because where there are 4-hour walls, they can be looked at as 2-hour walls. Where there are 2-hour walls, they can be looked at 1-hour walls, which allows us to open areas up larger, which allows us not to put in fire dampers or firewalls that don't normally need to be. So it's a little bit in the weeds, but just know that it allows us to be more flexible with the design if we were to include a fire protection system.
And obviously, it's a safety and security thing as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? It's a life safety issue as well. So it's, that's the bottom line, is it makes your building safer for your staff and your students. It helps with all the other stuff that's mentioned in regards to the weeds, but at the end of the day, it's a safer building because of it.
I'm embarrassed because self-serving, it helps when we get into the design side, it helps us, but you're right. God forbid it actually saves lives too. Thank you, Chris. MS-19, we had a chance to work with your food service staff, and there's a number of, I think, reasonable requests that they have for updated equipment, let alone layout. Again, we've got a line item later that really remodels the kitchen. This would be a line item that we would do if that wasn't to move forward, but I think we're moving on the pace for that remodel. But and then again, we've got a line item here for some other stuff that reach-in freezer, walk-in freezer, and cooler really are due for replacement here in the next 5 to 10 years. I don't have it checked in, but know that if we do the full-scale remodel, which we're proposing, obviously that stuff would get reworked as part of
I have
that.
a question regarding that.
Yes.
So it's not checked in, so it's not in the numbers right now, but if we do the full thing, we're adding it to the numbers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there's so much interaction with all these, and that's kind of what Chris and I and Jeff and our team are to manage that. So once we start kind of Xing things, we could play this game today. If we decide to remove anything, you need to allow us to go back and just look and make sure what are the what are the downstream effects to that. Make sure we don't overlook anything. So
we've covered the main overlaps based on what's checked in. So if there was VAV boxes in this room, or we were replacing, for instance, lighting in this room, but then we were to come back under the educational adequacy and remodel this room, the lighting would be in both. We've taken those duplications out, but if there is significant movement other than the things that are checked in now, then we need a little, as Hans mentioned, a little time to kind of check and balance that, but we'll get pretty darn close right now, that's for sure.
Awesome, thank you.
okay, so I went through the mechanical stuff. You're okay with that? Any questions, comments on that? I'm gonna move on to the electrical. I think these next ones will go a little bit quicker. Lighting upgrades, I think everybody understands the effects of modern lighting, modern LED lighting, both energy savings, extended maintenance, improved quality with the controls that we can do with dimming controls and whatnot. Something really cool that we do in special ed areas, we do light what's called, there's dimmable, which will change the brightness, but there's tunable, so it'll go from the bright white to the bright orange. So instead of seeing, some of these teachers have the pink or the blue paper over there, that's just to lighten the mood. They've got full ability to tune those lights to the color. Now, I'm not saying they would go to blue or green or red, but they could go from that softer, warmer orange or to the very bright white that some people like or don't like, right? And we found that really successful in those special education areas, not throughout the entire school, only in those specific areas. Emergency lighting, this is areas where there's just not enough emergency lights. I'm looking to see if this might be one of the rooms or several rooms that don't have proper emergency lighting. So we want to update that throughout the building. At the same time, electrical distribution, there's some older panels, about 6 of them that really need to get replaced. Though that equipment's going to be hard, if not impossible, to find equipment moving forward. So we want to get that updated. ES4 I'm on, add power and data to the middle school area. They're just those classrooms are lacking that. ES5 is the building doesn't have an emergency generator right now. That might be something that we want to talk about if it's needed or not. I would say it's more than 50-50. Most schools elect to have one, but there's some schools that say we don't lose power and we're fine. Talking to Lou, it seems like you guys have had some power issues lately.
Yeah.
So I know everybody's nodding their head together.
Yeah.
So just so you guys know in the room, this was one that I believe was unchecked originally.
Yeah.
And we had quite a bit of discussion with the administrative team when we kind of went through this and just said, I know it's kind of a big line item when you look at like, holy smokes, that's what a generator costs. But when looking at the safety and security of the building, I know that it was, without saying, it freaked me out to know that our building was out without phones and without, those type of things for an extended period of time, and families outside of the building couldn't get a hold of people in the building. And that usually doesn't happen in the middle of the school day. It happens at night or it happens over the weekend. And then all of a sudden we all come in and it's that, oh my gosh, what's happening? And we're in the scramble mode. There's kids here, etc. You guys know all that. So that's the discussion that we had, that even though it does look like a significant line item, I believe that we have had quite a few power issues of late. And I don't know historically how it is, but to me, that's more of a safety issue than it is anything else. And that's why we went back and checked it.
100% agree with you, not just safety in regards to like safety, what you normally think with like police safety and locking our doors and whatnot, but like student health. If we can't dial out to get a hold of a parent and it's emergency.
Exactly. And we have some, and we don't need to get into all of that. We have some obviously backup plans.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be pulling out cell phones out of, secretaries' desks on a weekly basis because the power's out and, we've got the grid down in Bristol or whatever it is. So anyways, that's why we went back and checked it.
Perfect.
Good call.
ES6 fire alarm system, your system works fine right now. It's a voice activated system. Again, there's some missing poles, some missing strobes. Once we did the remodel, we would bring this up to date. And at that point, rather than expanding the existing system, we want to replace the current system. It's not a brand new system. It's one that probably has 5 more years of life on it, but this would be the time to replace as part of the remodel if we were going to do it. PA and bell system. Last I checked with Tony, he had budget and he was planning on doing that. So I'll have to get back with him. He had told me to take that off for now, but I don't know if he actually did this work. So
would that go into capital fund then? If he was
he must have had some sort of budget to do it. He didn't tell me, but he had me remove it. But this is the type of stuff we've got some time to change some of the stuff over the next couple of years before we finalize on a potential.
That was part of the $1 million borrow.
Okay.
Was a security system. I know it was parking lots, roof, and then security upgrades. So I know that I believe that's where that original $100,000 came from. So
got it.
I want to talk to Tony again about this one and see if there's any sections that he wasn't able to fund. This is what I'm leaving out there. But I think we got quite a bit to fund throughout. We can absorb some of it if possible. All right, that's electrical and low voltage systems.
That was good.
Yeah. Any questions on that? Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next section is the exterior area. So when we talk exterior, the first line on them, EDM1 is the building facade. So that's expansion joints, sealants, tuck pointing. You've got some EFIS, let me see if I get that right. EFIS is exterior insulated facade system. So that's what some people think it's stucco, but it's an insulation system. Just some, there's some TLC that needs to be done on all this stuff. You can imagine if you've got brickwork that's got cracks in it, water gets in, It freezes, it breaks the brick. It only gets worse as as years go on. So it's really important to stay on top of that. I don't think there's major problems here, but there's definitely TLC that we need to get done. Door replacements and repairs. It's in the report. I believe there's 5 doors, sets of doors we'd look to replace in full. There's probably 4 others that we would look to new hardware, new hinges, weather strips on them. They're in specific locations. Again, I got them called out on a map, I think in the appendix. Windows in the 6th and 8th grade area. This is a picture of I think I've shown you guys this picture before. It's not meant to be frosted. It's lost its gas in there, and it's just mildew and film that's built up. So we want to get those replaced in the middle school. Likewise in the K through 8 area. Again, there's a detailed map in your appendix in the report showing exactly where those are at. Roofing replacements. Originally we had area 11 on there. It's not checked in because that work was done. So we've unchecked that. What remains is about 5 other areas of work. Again, I've got a projecting on the screen. It's in the report. That's really the yellow areas would be the next ones on the list to do if we're fortunate enough to pass a referendum.
I'm sorry, just so you guys know, the roof 11 is when we experienced the nurse's office.
Oh, the water.
When they were doing that, they were repairing.
The red, right?
Yeah.
Yes, so it's over like the 2nd, 3rd grade wing over, in this area. Where am I pointing? Yeah. Got turned around for a second, but anyways, that's that, and it was, I think we budgeted about 122, so I think we actually got a $13,000 credit from Carlson, and what we rolled that $13,000 in, it was basically Band-Aids to hopefully get us through to the major project. So they're gonna do a lot of the seam work. Some of the rubber has holes and things like that. Hans, you probably know better than I do. But just so you guys know that that's what they're currently doing, is taking that $13,000 that we had in credit to try to put a Band-Aid on it, on some of the other areas to get us through the next year or two before we would go to this project, so.
So, just a quick question,
Yeah.
because I know it wasn't just the nurses area that had the issue, like during open house, it was not pretty. That Band-Aid, is that for the other areas that
Yes.
were, okay,
Yeah.
sorry, just.
Yep,
didn't
so they
understand.
fully replaced the red section there.
Yep.
Which is, I believe we call it roof 11 or area 11. So none of the roofs are in great shape. But there are some sealants and things like long seams, or they have like and I don't know, you probably have a better technical term, but there's like a rubber coating. It almost looks like a plastic bag type of material that develops holes in it from sun and wind damage and things like that. They can go back through and tar that or replace the sections that have ripped and things like that.
Gotcha.
So that's where that extra $13,000 is going now, so that we don't have running leaks all over the building during that time. But again, it's a Band-Aid fix for the.
It's not
for the
gonna last
big-
long.
Exactly.
And allow me to get back with them. I haven't talked to them admittedly in probably 2 months since we developed this, and see if anything's changed. But I'm pretty confident that the money that we have in here in EDM 6 will cover quite a bit and get you to like new roofs.
Yes.
Where they are aging. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are all site work, right? And I've got them kind of broken up. The first 2, 7 and 8 are the concrete and asphalt. High priority stuff that really needs to be done now, like reconstructing that parking lot. We know that's pitted out pretty badly. Some base patching along the east side, and then some concrete on sidewalks and curbing, some ADA ramps that need to be redone. That's high need. We still got there's some other things that I don't even want to say 3 to 5 year need. It's just medium priority. It can be put off if needed for 3 to 5 years, but you're going to want to address them soon, right? So we've got them checked in. There's one that's farther out. That's the dumpster apron area. I also left it out because we're looking at doing an small addition for receiving out there. So we would address it as part of that project anyways. So that's why we don't have it checked in. From the athletic field and playground area, again, the high need area is your ADA surface. That's that blue soft surface out there. Let's see, I don't have a good picture of it. It's getting pretty worn. There's a trip hazard out there. There's some drainage areas out there. That T-ball field that needs a lot of TLC. So this would be the time to do it. Some lesser priority needs, but still things to have on your radar is the equipment starting to age. It's got a couple years life left in it at the very least. There's some rusting that should be sanded down and repainted. There's some of the equipment should get kind of dug out and reset up because they're starting to tilt. Again, we've got that in the referendum now, just to take care of now. And then lastly, landscaping enhancements, some fence replacements, stormwater. There's some stormwater on the south east corner. There's some where the stormwater goes really needs to be rethought a little bit. So we've got that included in here. Yeah, you guys are probably aware of that. Okay, on the facade exterior items.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The last section before we get to the adequacy and interior deferred maintenance, this is pretty self-explanatory. And again, we've got a lot of maps in there showing where these areas are at. But you've got aging ceilings, not so much in here, but definitely in the K-12 area. And it doesn't give the aesthetic that we want for the kids. Makes it feel dated. Sound panels in the multi-purpose. And I talked about the sound attenuation devices on the air handling equipment in the main gym. This would be to dampen sound. This would be some soft sound panels in the auxiliary or the multi-purpose room. Flooring replacements. Again, you've got a lot of VCT throughout. It's probably time to replace that stuff, help make it look dated, less dated, let alone it is very worn. Multi-purpose gym is one that's got a VCT floor. It's pretty common to have a VCT floor. I see that a lot, but that's a 70s, 80s design. There's newer technology, whether it's an epoxy rubber or whether it's a vinyl flooring that can go out there and provide a little bit better sport court, if you will, for that area.
Is that the small gym?
Yeah, the small gym. Yep.
So you're looking to replace it with like a softer?
Yep. We want it, and I got to be careful because it can be really soft. In order for it to be a multi-purpose area, you still need some rigidity to it. You don't want to drag a chair or a desk across it and rip it either. So it's not a sport court per se. It's much softer than what's out there though. There's products that will suit it and be perfect. Casework again obviously the Ryzik ring's in good shape, but the other two areas, the casework's getting a little long in the tooth. Some of it's broken and just needs to be replaced. So we're addressing that. There's ADA items, nothing major. ADA, just like fire alarm systems, is always evolving. So we go in there. They have different requirements for having different pull heights, different on the doors, having to swing a different way, having to be a little bit wider door entries. So we've addressed this on most of the this is a line item just to address that on most of the group restrooms and a couple of the single bathrooms. And then lastly, there's some life safety upgrades. This is really towards the two-story area. The storeways need to be cordoned off a little bit better. They're just not segregated stairways like a code official would require now. It's grandfathered in. Somebody comes in here, they can't make you change it now. I guess they could if they really wanted, but they wouldn't. But if we do any work in there, they're gonna expect it to be updated, or you could proactively do it. So that's why this line item's checked in. So when I said earlier, if there's a check in it, it rolls up in the bottom. We always get somebody that adds everything up and they say, Hans, your numbers are wrong here at the bottom. Again, I remind you, if these numbers are over here for your knowledge, if there's a check in it, it rolls in at the bottom. If it's not checked in, and I'll show you how that works in a little bit. Educational adequacy. This is what we wanted to get to, right? The remodels. This is the fun stuff, not the infrastructure stuff.
So we have some larger plans for
Right.
you guys to be able to see. It's just versions of
Oh, thank you.
the electronic. It's just a little easier. It does not show.
Yeah, it's big enough.
It does not show all the detail, obviously, because the detail, we know it needs to happen. We're just not drawing every line and every door frame, that's for sure.
So this is a little bit different than what's in your book. Again, this is based on our interviews with the staff and getting their feedback on what they'd like to see, what they didn't like. We've adjusted the numbers. There's discrete line items in here, but there's a lot of interaction through these. So right now, most all of them are checked in, but we can play with this a little bit more and show you what it looks like if we uncheck some of these. So let's go through this. First item is the kitchen cafeteria receiving area. That's if you look at if you look on your sheet, it's kind of that maroon area. Obviously, we're expanding the cafeteria into what currently is the stage. But that's being used as a learning area. We're increasing the kitchen into the underutilized that lobby area. So that's a pretty major remodel, but that's going to have lasting benefits at the building.
If you think about it now, just to give you a little wayfinding lesson there, if you think about now, you walk in and you walk down the ramp and then you go through the cafeteria. You will no longer have to do that. You will be walking down a new corridor along the gym. Okay, so you won't be cutting through the cafeteria anymore to get over to the middle school. You'll have a dedicated pathway that runs right along the gym that will get you from that school entry to the east. So does that make sense? It's a big deal. It checks off a lot of boxes and it's very complicated in that area. But if you think about that, it's that new corridor and then that existing ramp that comes from that door 2, I believe it is, that comes down into the gym, that actually becomes part of the kitchen.
Okay.
That ramp becomes part of the kitchen. So basically from that ramp all the way through the cafeteria, all becomes new and improved, including that new addition for receiving out the back.
So the 2 big boxes, are those the 2 gyms?
The 2 white boxes
Yeah.
are the 2 gyms,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
The the reddish box is the new cafeteria shape. So that you can see over on the left side, that little jog, that's the ramp that would actually be opened up to be part of the cafeteria. So it would be one big space. And then the maroon space is the receiving and kitchen. And we've got some existing walls in there. We still have to work around that stuff, but basically that area is substantially improved in regards to its operation. And as we've talked about over and over again, how quickly students can be served will just allow more educational time. That's the key, is to make sure that we're getting students through that as safely and efficiently as possible to increase education time for the rest of the day. Right now, it's a pretty significant pinch point for the school, and we're hoping we are going to eliminate that.
If you look in the report, this is one area that hasn't changed based on our conversation, and there's a little bit more detail. We wanted to keep this more granular, especially when we were talking with the teachers, because some folks start wanting to, well, where is the sink at and where's the door, and we're not there right now. But there's more detail behind this, and some of that's reflected in the original report. In this particular area, that's still accurate.
I just wanted some reference points.
Yeah,
to
that
make
makes
sure I was
sense.
reading it right.
Can I ask you, when we get closer, I'm more of a visual person, I mean, this, okay.
Yep.
Do you do like 3D? Like where you can take us through a tour?
It's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, we can take it, we have a certain amount of input, obviously, that we can make a stab at kind of looking at what that looks like. We still want to keep that very generic, because inevitably somebody will look at that and say, I don't like blue.
Yep.
No. And so and inevitably we can do a little bit of that, but we don't have all the input yet, right? The process will provide an enormous amount of input that will create the detail that fills in all this. And what you see in those images is a lot of detail. And so it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's really great because people understand, no, now I get it. And maybe we can do some very generic images of that. We want to be really careful that we don't give somebody a reason to vote no, whether it's too nice, not nice enough, I don't like the color, I don't like the material, whatever it might be.
Or come back on the backside and say, well, you had that in that.
Right,
in
you
that
showed it
tour that
this
I
way
had, but I
before
don't-
and now it's
now
not that way.
yeah.
So it's just a gentle, we have to kind of work through that and kind of determine if there are significant areas that we really need to show something so to help people understand. But we can talk about it, but just so you know, as you're talking to community members, obviously you can imagine, you, just like your house, even with your significant other, you do something and you say, hey, I think this looks really good, I really like this, and your significant other looks and goes, that's crazy. I don't like that. So there's always a compromise, and the process vets that out, but we want to be really careful that we don't give ammunition to people who may be less than positive.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is we can create enough graphics that, like, if people need help just understanding the concept of what problem are we solving. But during once the referendum passes and during the detailed design process, there's lots of opportunity for input, and then those 3D images come into great focus. I mean, to the point where they look like pictures of the actual spot.
Perfect.
So before it's built, you'll have an opportunity to walk through it.
Yes. Well said. We would have 3D images eventually, and that does help make those decisions on color, but it's premature right now. Next line, let's keep going through this. Next line is the STEM or STEAM area, flex area. This is the old district office, and I'll talk about why it's the old district office in a second. This is the area in orange and the area in blue. Obviously, what we want to do here is rethink that underused lobby, turn that into a middle school STEM area, STEAM area, makerspace area. That doesn't mean nobody else can use it, but it would be geared towards that age group. That blue area would have some breakout spaces for collaboration and project learning. There'd be a unisex bathroom in there because we need to get some more restrooms down there.
I'm gonna be Vanna.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's here. So that's the current district office is the orange. That's that lobby space where that ramp goes down. We want to make that much more usable. And as you can see, the gray represents circulation, right? So when you're coming from the current, I'm sorry, Hans. When you come in, you're coming down that new hallway I talked about. There we go. And you're kind of going straight all the way through. So it's not jogging around, it's jogging a little bit at the gym entrance, but for all intents and purposes, you've got a pretty straight shot from the existing school office and that main school entry all the way down through to really what is the east end of the building.
So you're not really having to cut through spaces anymore to get
No,
from A
it
to B.
is a circulation spine, so it will really help. If you think about the logistics of the building and moving kids, it's kind of a pain, and frankly, certain times of the day, kids can't cut through here, right? The other piece of this is that certain times of the day, that little niche on the east side of the cafeteria, like going to the district office, you turn right, then you turn left, then you turn right, then you turn left again. That will all go away, and that's used for queuing for kids to eat lunch, right? To queue up, that will all be cleaned up and a lot of that queuing will happen inside either the serving area of the kitchen or the cafeteria itself. So that circulation spine will be a lot more effective and efficient for moving students when they need to be moved.
Not just that, but from a safety perspective too, I would
Absolutely.
think it's much safer because you're gonna be able to very clearly see if someone's not where they're supposed to be.
Exactly. The sight lines will be much better for observation.
Chris, you're doing a good job. The next three items are the K3 core area, the multi-purpose room, the second floor. Let's you can touch those when you're up there.
Okay, so this is a fairly significant change. So if you think about the area in the middle of those two corridors, right?
Yeah.
We're really taking a big chunk of that and readdressing it to make it more effective. So I'm gonna kind of go left to right because it makes more sense, and then if I touch the screen, I won't screw anything up. One of the things that we heard is that kindergarten rooms are in general purpose classrooms right now, and they're a little tight. They're more than a little tight. State and regional standards would say that kindergarten rooms should be bigger. So we are actually right-sizing kindergarten and giving them 4 full-size kindergarten classrooms that would have restrooms within them, all the things that they need for kindergarten. And that would be basically on the lower level of that far west wing.
Are those the gray rooms?
Yes,
Okay.
those are the kindergarten rooms. Pre-K stuff would happen in those 2 rooms, the 2 white rooms.
Okay.
It doesn't mean those rooms won't get updated under the deferred maintenance things. It's just that we're not moving walls, and that's why they're not colored.
Got it.
Okay?
Yep.
We're also looking at a new entry there. There's some structural issues with that precast above.
Mhm.
We have to address that. So we're adding a new entry at that location so the pre-K program can come in and go directly into those rooms without getting into the building unless they need to.
That's nice.
So it's another secured entry. Okay?
Are we adding bathrooms to 4K rooms also? Or no?
No, we have restrooms right across the hall, and we've talked about, a unisex restroom here for special ed. So we have some options to look at what that looks like, but we're not necessarily adding new individual restrooms in those 4K rooms.
And really, if you take away all the kindergarteners who would be utilizing those rooms now, you're not gonna have the traffic like you have currently.
You're gonna have a little, it's still a little tight. I'll
Yeah.
fully admit, it's a little tight upstairs as well. We're making it a lot better than it is right now and working within the existing confines of the building. So the other pieces that we heard, STEAM and STEM are important, and art is inadequate. It's moved around a few different places. When we first started this process, it was here, and then it went down here, or over here, and, it's been bouncing around a little bit, based on you guys just trying to figure out how to get things aligned. What we've created is a new art room on the north wing. That's one of those orange boxes. And the other orange box is a STEAM room, so a hands-on learning space. They may be interchangeable to a certain extent. They may be connected between the two, because we see some synergies, potential synergies between them. And the STEAM room being closest to the west will give us the opportunity that, for instance, let's say fourth graders want to come down and use the STEAM room, they could check out that room and they could get to it without interrupting a lot of the core educational traffic in the K-3 area. So it's accessible. So that's kindergarten. The blue spaces are flex spaces.
The dark blue or
The dark blue,
Okay.
dark blue, the light blue are special ed. So we've covered all the spaces and checked all the boxes for special ed. The little green spaces are the interventionists, so math and reading. Those are right size spaces. So we have kindergarten here, these three rooms along here, I did it again. These three rooms along here, and this room right here would be third grade. So it'd be centered around that flexible space, so they'd all have some opening into that flexible space and have kind of a teen space for third grade to get to. Once again, in a special ed room, this would be this lighter gold box is a staff space. And then these gold boxes are student services and administration. The idea behind that is that there's a significant amount more of collaboration that can happen and communication that can happen between those staff. In addition to the fact that they're centrally located, that anybody from the building can get to them without crossing traffic from the other one. So if there's a middle school student that needs to see a counselor, they can come down, go down this hall and get into those spaces without necessarily having to have everybody and their brother know where they're going, okay? Because there are some, not everybody wants to know where to go to a counselor. So there would be some freeing up, even special ed director would be in this spot with their support, conference rooms, those kinds of support spaces that would be available to everybody would be opened up along that corridor. So once again, they're accessible by the entire staff and the entire student body.
Does that include the school nurse?
Yes, school nurse would actually be across the hall in that existing locker room space that we would be remodeling. So when you walk in the front door, right there on the left, that corner. Before you would go down our new ramp towards the east, or to the east.
The two locker rooms off the auxiliary or the multi-purpose room are very underutilized. We said we'd want to keep, the teachers agree, we want to keep one for storage and there's a bathroom. The other one makes a good spot for nursing because there's already plumbing there and it's a good size space, let alone central to the building.
Perfect.
Okay? Any questions? I'll go, just since we're over here, I'll go upstairs. So this is the upstairs plan. I know it's a little bit smaller. You can see it a little bit better on your drawing. This would be first and second grade.
Okay.
So if you think about that circular stair that goes up through the multi-purpose room down here, the big multi-purpose room, that would all be taken out. So there wouldn't be a connection in the middle. All the little spaces that are up above in the middle up there would all go away and we would right size those classrooms and create a small flexible space for those staff and students to use within their first and second grade area. Who's in what room? All to be determined, right? In first grade and second, we tried very hard to give everybody direct outside access, light, natural light. We weren't able to do that. What we have built in is so these rooms up above here would get put some daylight from up above, so they wouldn't be dark. They'd get a little skylight or a roof monitor. Lots of different ways we can do that. But we get some daylight up above. And then this room, this third grade room that's in the middle of there would be the same thing. It would get some daylight from up above. So nobody would be in a dark room. We tried very hard to get everybody on the outside wall, and it was frankly impossible. So the ability to get some daylight into those spaces will be really beneficial.
Do you have an answer for this light problem for that 5K room in the middle? That flex space?
This one, it's not,
One lower.
this one is a kindergarten room. We do not have an answer for that. There would be one kindergarten room that wouldn't have natural light. And in talking to the kindergarten staff a couple of times over the last few months, the right sizing of the rooms was
More of a priority.
more of a priority because right now, there's 2 kindergarten rooms right here, I believe. They both have natural light, but they're literally crunched on top of each other. So the ability to get them a right sized room is a compromise, but thank you for bringing that up. Anything on that end?
No.
Okay, everything makes sense? So as we kind of continue around the library,
We're at
this
now.
space where we're sitting right now, the original drawings in your booklets show a different layout and a different concept. Based on staff feedback, we have pulled back and we're basically remodeling this space from wall to wall with the vision of a new library. The only thing that will be significantly different than is in this current space right now is this space. It'll still be accessible to the library, but basically we're building a glass wall between this space and the library. The intent of that is that not that the library can't use it, the library could use it whenever they need to use it, but there may be times over the next 20, 25 years of the building where you need a spot that needs to have some talking happening in it, that needs to be acoustically separated from the quiet space of the library. That's what that is. So this space would be divided into one bigger room and a smaller room that would be operable or connectable. So you could have one room that would go this whole length, be able to fit the staff in it comfortably in chairs for staff meetings, be able to fit maybe a grade level in it. Once again, in that needs list, we talked about large group instruction. This could be a potential large group instruction space. I will fully admit the library staff believes that they need this space, and that's perfectly fine. We completely understand that, but we're building for that long-term flexibility of what happens in the building and the potential for things to happen in the future.
So are we making this space bigger, like wall?
No, it's
Okay.
just the wall, don't quote me on this, but the wall somewhere out here, the glass wall.
So we're not expanding the square footage of this
No,
space?
no.
Okay.
Where the glass wall would be here, so theoretically, kids using the library could move in and out of here and be able to be visually be seen and supervised, which is a big point. But if this needed to be a space, even for library things, if they're teaching something in here and somebody's trying to read quietly over there, the ability to close the door and create some acoustical separation, we think provides some real flexibility for the building, both short-term and long-term.
And then it's more like cosmetic stuff then for the library?
Yes, I mean, it's, so the computer lab goes away,
Okay.
new circulation desk, new storage, new office. There would also, the only other big change is there would be an additional door right in the middle. Now you think outside that hallway, there's a ramp.
Yeah,
We're splitting the ramp.
okay.
So the hallway is,
That's why.
it's very wide. So we're splitting the ramp and providing a flat spot. So if you think about 60% of the ramp will still be ramp. The other 40% will be flat coming from this end to a center door. So it'll all be on the same level. And then there would be stairs when you head towards the Reisig.
Got it.
Okay, so it's ramp going down, flat stairs, and they meet at the bottom.
Got it.
Okay?
Yep.
So once again, long-term flexibility, providing opportunities for where the front door of the library is, handicap accessibility, easier handicap accessibility to a variety of spaces within this bigger space. Okay?
Yep.
Next
Where are we
up.
at next,
So
Tom?
we just talked, we were on EDA 7, EDA 8 is the fourth and fifth grade breakout area. That is,
So we had, once again, during our conversations, the original intent was to create one of those blue flexible spaces for each grade level, each grouping, not necessarily each grade level, but K3 as much as we could. K doesn't need them quite as much. First and second grade a little bit, third grade a little bigger. And we looked at fourth and fifth grade, and then we have a fairly substantial one here for middle school. After talking to fourth and fifth grade teachers, they didn't feel that it would significantly change. And it frankly wasn't worth the investment to create that flexible space within it. So they want a flexible room that's still a room. So basically they would determine which one of these rooms is a general purpose classroom for core instruction and which one of those rooms becomes a flex space for them to move kids in and out with different staff and different things that they want to do. The only thing that we may do along there that we have some opportunities within the budget is to create some small group study areas within that hallway. Like maybe take out a few lockers and put a little seating area where we could provide, there's lots of kids that sit on the floor. There's tutors that pull out a folding chair and work with somebody. We'd like to make that a little bit better if we could. So there may be some improvements along that hallway, but the fourth and fifth grade staff didn't feel that open, flexible space was usable for them. So we listened and we pulled it out. It doesn't mean that in the long term, if the school, the district decides to do that, that we believe there's the flexibility to be able to do that from a space perspective and from making sure everybody has a home. But right now, as of right now, we listened to the staff and we took those out.
What are the dark blues then?
These dark blues, I think that's EA, I don't have my list in front of me.
10.
So in the
Right.
Rising wing, we heard quantities of restrooms were an issue. So these are the two existing restrooms, boys and girls. They're both very small. The intent is to take both of those and make them girls, kind of significantly remodel them, basically double the size of the girls' restroom by making both of them girls, and then taking this little special ed room and a little bit of band support space and making that the boys' restroom. So boys' restroom would be here, girls' restroom would be here, and that space would basically quantify and provide significant more fixtures for both boys and girls in the Rising wing that can also be used for obviously community events and all those things. In addition to the ones that are right up by the district office.
Talk about we skipped over EDA 9, which is the family, consumer, and life skills area.
So based on what we heard from the building leadership is that there was a desire both from a special ed perspective and a general education perspective to have a basic combination life skills room where special ed folks can work with students and teach them some basic safety life skills things. And knowing that it wouldn't be used for that and need for that wouldn't be full time, that we would also double that space as a family and consumer science program. Now, obviously there isn't a family and consumer science program right now. There's some of those things being taught in different places around in the middle school, especially 4th and 5th grade too. But this would be a space that would be accessible to everybody that would provide the opportunity for that program to evolve and move. It also frees up some spaces for different things to happen. So it's allowing that shift to happen. So we align those folks right where they need to be. So grade levels are aligned, counselors are in the same space, all those kinds of things.
Next one's I think we're going around the horn. We'll skip the addition. Let's go to the middle school lower level.
So we talked quite a bit about, we're adding a full-size science in our new STEM lab, right? So a couple things on that STEM lab. The intent is for it to be a lot of glass out to that flexible space. And so that space can kind of spill out. So theoretically, not even theoretically, in reality, you could support 25 kids in that space and maybe 25 additional kids out here, and they could be doing some group project. So that flexible space would be open from a visual perspective, and maybe it's a garage door, maybe it's a folding door. We have to kind of figure that out. But the idea that that's very visible, so even community members walking down this hall can see, hey, there's really cool STEM stuff happening. Hey, look at those kids, they're really doing some neat stuff. It becomes a showcase. That adds a third science room. And right now, science for a few years is working out of a room down here, a regular classroom. So we talked about at one point, reducing the size of this science room and creating some flex space on that lower level. Once again, listening to staff and hearing what we were hearing from how they thought science would go in middle school. We kept that lab the same. We're upgrading it from a deferred maintenance perspective, new cabinets, those kinds of things. We're trying to figure out a way to get lockers out of that space so they can use that space in the lower level, that hallway space for some flex. So they can pull out, have some different kinds of furniture, but they still have to keep a hallway going through there. So the flex space got a little smaller, but once again, in listening to staff, we heard that 3 full-service science rooms were important for middle school. So we have one on the lower level that's existing, one on the upper level that's existing, and then the new STEM lab or STEAM lab. Okay?
The East Gathering Commons, large group instruction boardroom.
So that lower vestibule that's over there, right? You come in and then you go up the 2 sets of steps. On the top, it's really unusable. On the bottom, it's really unusable. What we're doing is we're taking that lower piece off. So that goes away. Where Hans was talking about before, the ventilation, we're taking that off. There's some roofing issues there. We're just gonna take it off. And we're going to add on that side of the building. That's the second spot. Besides the little addition on the north side with the receiving, we're gonna add a sliver of building along here. That sliver of building starting closest, well, we'll start down here. That gold is a new district office. The green is a secured entry, so just like here, you come in. So in your current secured entry, you walk in, you check in at the window, they buzz you in. The way it's gonna work in the future is you walk in, the inside set of doors is locked like it is now, but you walk through the office. So it's not a window check-in. Somebody comes through the door, you can choose to buzz them in, you can choose to let them walk in, however you operationally want to do that. But they would physically walk into the office and talk to human beings face to face. As I said, you can choose to buzz them in, or you can choose to just let them walk in. If you walk into 22 schools, you'll see 5 different options based on how they do it. That's just, your option will be there. So we're gonna change that at the existing office. This would be the same thing. You would walk in, the inside set of the vestibule doors would be locked, and you would go into the district office. You'd be forced to go into the district office and see somebody or get buzzed in before you could get into the building. The other thing that we're providing along here is a new boardroom. So a larger right-size space that could be used by the community the same way. You could open that space up so they couldn't get into the building, come into the first set of doors, they could go into the boardroom and not be able to get into the rest of the building. There would be actually a little restroom in there. So somebody could actually rent that space and not have access to any other part of the building. It could also be used by the school, obviously, because there would still be access here. It would just be locked during the evening hours if it was checked out. But you have the ability for that flex space to happen. So another educational space along a secured entry.
How big is that building, like per person space?
For the boardroom?
Yeah.
It's about the size of a classroom, which is obviously much larger than you have now. And what we're trying to provide is a variety of spaces, so you can choose. For instance, you'll still be able to use potentially this space, which would be closed off, for a board meeting. You could use conference rooms in this space for a boardroom. There's different spots you could go depending on the, obviously, as you know, you can use the gym for a boardroom if you need to. Okay? So also along that, on the right side of that, we have another set of stairs. We're gonna lose those stairs. So when you walk into that east side, you got those 2 angled stairs on either side. If you're coming in from the east side, the one on the right is gonna go away. And it's gonna become a new educational space. So it's gonna be a tiered space. We'll show you some images in just a second. A tiered space that would allow a group of students or staff to get together and do large group instruction in a different way. It would be open to the hallway, so it's not a quiet space, but it is a space where 25, maybe even depending on the exact design, maybe even 2 classes of kids could get together and have a teacher teach them something. Actually, we'll show you some images in a second. I see some wrinkling.
It's really hard to like
Yep.
picture because I know that's lower level now, so like how do you get to it?
Right, so there would be, we'll show you some images in just a second. So basically we have a new addition on that side that meets those needs. And then on the upper level, on the Right by the gym, we'd be adding a concession stand and a school store that would take up some of that space. As you might imagine, we still have an elevator that needs to come up and get out. We still have all those things we're working around. Those all stay the same.
Okay.
The stairs on this end that are on the left when you walk in the door, those stay the same.
Okay.
Okay?
So that covers pretty much the remodel area when as it applies to ed adequacy. Is there any questions, comments, anything you think we overlooked? What's left is the exterior. I think we've talked about this at the last couple meetings. There's a couple line items in here for the new north parking. Well, excuse me, start out with the bus loop, revising the bus loop on the south side of the building.
Yeah, and as we talked about last time, buses will come in off of 203rd.
Third, yeah.
Third. They'd come in here, they would loop around, they would queue like this. Students would get out of the bus stop on the right, never crossing traffic. And then buses would just peel away when all the kids are safely in the school. At the end of the day, when they're queuing, they would come along, they'd all queue. Before any kids are released, they would come out, they'd get on their buses, never crossing any traffic, and the buses would all peel away. There's the existing hard surfaces right here. We're adding a significant amount on more hard surface out here. And we're also creating a fitness track. And I don't remember, 5 laps equals a mile. So there's an opportunity. Now, the only way that can really be used, because right now people are cutting through, right? There's some cars that cut through. We're providing a gate here and a gate over here. So this will be student-only zone whenever those gates are closed. Now, you might think, well, what happens when a fire truck has to get back here? They just drive through the gate. It happens all the time. It's not something that a fire truck can't get through when they need to, but it is something that will stop me from coming over to the 4500, right?
Yeah.
So there's some definite benefits to that from an educational perspective, a wellness, physical education, all those kinds of things. In addition, which isn't shown on this, somewhere either in this area or maybe on the other side here where kids can still get to this green space, there'd be an outdoor classroom.
That's awesome.
We don't know exactly what that looks like. We have a budget aligned for it. It's not a building, it's an outdoor room, but it's a spot where education can happen outside on beautiful days like today.
Question for you, with the addition, we'll call it like the administration addition, because I don't know what else to call it. How much parking would we lose? Because parking is an issue.
Well, perfect timing. What a segue that is. We are losing a couple spots on the east.
The 45.
The 45, like,
I want to say it's
4 or
it's closer
5.
to 5 or 6.
Because we're just having to adjust the curbs a little bit.
Okay.
But if we go to the next slide, so on the north side, we're taking that parking lot, all this section you just repaved, and we're going all the way to the west, all the way to 203rd.
Okay.
So that does a couple of things. Right now, most people come in here and they come down and park, right?
Yeah.
Or they come in here and go around this way. Some people just cut in here. We're basically doubling the parking on the north side. And the other thing we're doing is we would want to work that car drop off would come along here and come in here. And you can see the queuing area we would get for cars morning and afternoon. So when school gets out at what time, Jack?
2:45.
At 1:45, somebody's mom is sitting here in her car on her cell phone checking Facebook, right? And that's perfectly fine, but that's every school in the country is dealing with it, right?
Yes.
So they will have a significant amount more of space to queue. We could even start to double queue them. There's some safety issues there that you can work on, but what this allows is queuing and a drive lane. So if somebody picks up their kid here, they don't have to wait till the first person leaves and they can pull out. So it allows the traffic lane and that queuing space.
So just a few more questions, sorry.
Absolutely.
I noticed we're losing 2 softball diamonds. We do have 2 softball boys and girls teams here, and we do host games. So just throwing that out there. I know it's a short season, but we're losing 2 of them. And I also believe, don't we rent them out during the summer?
We do, and I know, Chris has always said this too. So if we go back one slide, Hans, that space where there is one there now. Obviously, that is the one where the boys play now.
Yep.
Obviously, that space that we have there is basically a mud pit. The third one, right by where the buzzards are
Yeah.
queuing there. That doesn't mean that we can't do something in that open space if we decide maybe the track isn't something that we want, or this was just conceptual saying like, we have this space here. I think that a track would be really neat, or some extra Hvac spot, stuff like
What's
that.
over there? Like, are we utilizing that? It's a field right now.
It's green space.
On the opposite side of the
Yeah.
road,
Yeah,
there is nothing over there that we've ever utilized. I don't know what the agreement is with like the village or anything like that. I mean, so those are both agreement, both
Yeah.
spots that we could, and to
because
be
that is
honest.
ours, right? I thought it
Yes.
was ours.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
just
but
making sure.
there-
It is fully ours.
Yes, it's ours. I'm just saying that there's different things we could do with that space
Yeah.
if we don't decide to do a softball area. There's multiple areas, and to be honest, I mean, I'm sure these guys would have a better idea, but if we're talking about adding a track compared to moving that softball field maybe a little bit to the south, I would think it would probably be pretty comparable in
Absolutely.
cost, and it wouldn't be a big deal as far as, or we could do both. I don't know if that's, if it would be big enough, but that space that we're losing there, to me, the parking lot on the north is a non-negotiable.
No, 100% agree with you.
That's gotta go to, like that. I mean,
100% agree with you.
and
Anybody
yeah.
who has attended a concert here, I
right,
think
a
will agree with
concert,
you.
I mean, open house, when it was raining out, people were parked all the way through
Oh,
the
yeah.
neighborhood. People in the neighborhood don't like us parking in their lawn, so I think that's a non-negotiable. I think the softball field is, to me, it would be a pretty easy add, depending on where we wanted to do it.
That's what, if you remember, right, one of the teachers brought that up, and we kind of said, well, it's not, and we all agreed it wasn't priority. Let's see where we run, and we're going to talk about the $20 million and its impact on the taxes. If we feel like we've got some flexibility to add some, that might be a line item we want to consider. That's something that can be added later on.
Well,
It's
and I
not,
don't
it's
know
not.
too, like, is it beneficial for us to even rent them out? Like, would it, you know what I mean? So like,
Right.
if we were to put one in that free space over there, so boys and girls can both have a practice area
Sure.
and we can host games and we rent it out during the summer, is it beneficial for us?
See, my thing, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but for me, I would like to think big picture
Yeah,
and think of like, why stop there? Like, let's not just throw a softball field on that side over there. Let's look at building a complex like we were at last night for Salem.
yes,
You know what I mean?
that would
Like
be
something
awesome.
like that, where, and if that's more of like a community charge, or you know what I mean? Like, I think
Yeah.
that's a small scale thing, where like, if we could put 4 softball fields in a little complex over there with a
That'd be
concession stand,
amazing.
that would be a community drive versus, us just kind of a quick fix. So
Yeah,
that's, I
no.
guess, where I'm thinking, that.
Love it, love it.
What else?
Like I said, I agree with you. The parking lot to me is also a non-negotiable. I just was like, okay, well, there's 2 there, so how does that fit in long-term for our students?
I agree the parking lot is needed. I think it's kind of a disaster the way it is right now, just from driving in it and going through the pickup. 2 lanes is not working. It never works. You always have someone flying through that second lane. That's where we got into.
Well, and I always go the wrong way because I see a parking spot and then I'm like, oh, I'm not the wrong way.
You're one of those.
I am because I don't think about my decision until I'm committed.
Big picture, love it. In the weeds.
Yep, we got things to work on and
Yeah.
some flexibility. in
How
the
does that
schedule.
work for safety though as well? Because I noticed the parking lot is cutting into a little bit of the playground area. And then I know in prior public comments, it was brought up about the fence.
Oh,
Good,
yeah.
So-
good segue. Next line item, EDA 16, is we would expand the ADA, rather than in deferred maintenance is fix what you have now.
Yeah.
EDA 16, while we're doing all this, we're gonna need to address that playground, get some new equipment in there, expand the soft
That's where we
service
need to
area.
fence
So
all those things.
Oh,
That would
okay.
all be
Fence.
included.
So the fencing is already built into
Yep,
it.
I mean, the fencing along here as far as we need, I mean, obviously, we don't want to necessarily think we're gonna fence the whole,
No. Mhm.
but in those critical areas, there's some new code things that are requiring fencing in certain spots where kids are playing at certain levels, especially when you think about the age of the kids.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it would have to be built into it.
Awesome, thank you.
the last 2 things, they're not checked in. This is kind of possibility thinking. Community center, this is essentially a 2-court building with a fitness room, locker, meeting space. There's some folks as part of our listening session said, hey, we need more gym area. Through our, the last months of discussion with the admin team, it was determined that that's not priority. It's probably above the scope of this to add something like that.
And
There
the
are,
reason it's pertinent on this slide
Yeah.
is because they fit within this. So that gym piece would fit along here. And the
Okay.
next line item was a potential academic addition, if you would need to get to that, would also fit down here.
Okay.
So we have master planned how these things work, so that stuff can happen if and when it wants to happen. It was never, the gym thing was never really, there was a little conversation about, hey, we need it for the school. There was a bigger conversation about this community might want it. After we've got through things and looked at the priorities of things, as Hans mentioned, the admin team said, let's at least talk to the board about it, let you understand that we have planned it out, we know what it would take, but we would need to hear from you and or the community that that is a really high priority before we would suggest going down that path right now, because that's a pretty significant dollar item.
Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to say before with like incorporating the village or something or the community along those things. There's been talk of, some sort of, fitness center type of activity, which would be more of a community center, like those type of things. Obviously we're not there yet, but like that's where my mind goes versus like, when it's saying a softball field. Let's think about a complex, something that the entire community, that Salem thing gets used every weekend and there's tournaments there.
It's
And,
big.
it was neat to be able to watch 4 different games at once yesterday and, go chat with somebody, and those kind of things I think aren't on the scope of reality for us. So that's why I'd like to just take it to that level. We're just not there yet.
No, totally agree. Love it.
So as we mentioned before, and we showed you when we were here a few weeks ago, we haven't designed anything yet, but sometimes it's very helpful for people to see a couple images of what other schools are doing. And so here's some opportunities to look at different kinds of glass and different small group areas. If you go to the next slide, Hans, the top right-hand picture is that educational stair I was talking about. So you think what typically happens is an adult or a presenter is at the bottom and kids are scattered along. There's a regular stair that goes up the side, but those are really seat height steps. And kids curl up and read books there. They listen to a presenter. They have small group meetings. They draw, whatever they might need to do. Those spaces are really quite popular when they are installed. And frankly, that's a perfect spot for everybody to be able to use it. Obviously, middle school can come to it. Little kids from the K3 area can come down and use it. It would be checked out just like it would be, any conference room would be checked out. We just have to figure out how the scheduling works, and it would be an opportunity for, once again, large group instruction that meets the desire that we heard from the staff in a different kind of way.
got about 5 more minutes. There's a couple things I want to point out before we wrap up. EDA 13, we glossed over. This is classroom furniture and IT equipment. If you look at this sheet, there's a lot of areas in white that we haven't touched. And this happens on a lot of projects where we remodel 40-60% of the building, and then there's areas that didn't get upgraded. And it's kind of like, we should have gotten them new furniture too. So there's a line item in there to update all the other rooms, furniture and IT, get them monitors.
So it's consistent.
Yeah, so it's
across the
consistent.
school.
Yep. That's something that doesn't need to happen, but it's something that we should consider. Right now, it's included.
Well, and because one of the things that can happen is you end up with kind of an equity issue. You kind of get the new and the old, and this way, whether it's new or refurbished, it all looks like new. It's the
Well, we
same.
have that already in our school, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you see the 70s section and then you see our newer section.
And in reality, there's still furniture in this building that's usable, right?
Yeah.
It's not every single piece, but a majority of the furniture in the building, especially from an educational support perspective, would be new.
So
As
one
we're pushing these chairs down at 658 today from room 201
Yeah.
across the entire building. Right?
No.
You
So-
guys are sitting on folding chairs. Excellent.
One thing I wanted to show you, we've got a whole cash flow, and this we could spend an hour on, but we're going to spend 5 minutes on it. What I want you to see in the upper right corner is the tax impact in the orange. And what this shows is ours says at the second to the bottom, annual tax increase for $100,000 home is $28. If you remember, Lisa said $30. So we've got a little bit to fine tuning, like she said. She's your FA. She's the one that does it. We're trying to mirror what she does so that what we can do is we can X things in, remove things based on this conversation. We've done that. I want to show you how this works a little bit. For instance, right now we are showing, it's a little tough to see, we're showing a $20.7 million project. If we include the family consumer ed area that we wanted, if we want to add in, what else was in that, some of that concrete work, if we want to add that in, it's as simple as Xing them in. I got a little solver button here that'll solve it, and the tax impact raises it $2 per year for $100,000. So we can sit and play that game.
You could look at
live.
The fitness or the community center edition.
Let's
and
do that. Lisa said that it was, what did she say, $1 million for every million you add. We'll see if that's true on our tool. This is 12 million we're adding. So give me a second, my formula's wonked up here. All right. Scroll up. So now we're up to $130. So that, we've added $100 in taxes for adding $12. So a little bit of fine tuning needs to be done, but these are the games we can play. What I really want to show you is the interest rate. This is where this is a powerful tool. We can talk. If you remember right, she said she had it modeled at 3.25. And we said that we just sold bonds for 2%, I think we said. So if we change from 3.25 here to 2.5, let's see what that does. Remember, originally it was $30 for $100,000 a home. That drops it down to $18.
Okay, so that's pretty powerful.
Yeah,
It's like buying a car.
Yeah, that interest rate's is a real powerful thing. So when she said, she's not wrong, when she was up here, she said, I'm being conservative. She's being conservative, but she's right. We don't know when we're selling what interest rates are going to do. But as we get there, we can fine tune this more. We'll talk about next steps here.
Yeah, just a quick comment there. So as you want to start saying, what if we added this in or took this out? Yes, you're concerned about the impact to the overall plan, but what you're really concerned about is what does it cost the taxpayer?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, and we can get that with a high degree of accuracy, but then once you kind of land on that, before you make final decisions, we'd go back to Baird and say, okay, here's what the plan looks like. They would fine tune it and get the exact numbers, but we'll be very close. So it's just a much more efficient way as opposed to going back and forth and back and forth. We can do it in a matter of minutes.
Awesome.
So we've got, we've talked through a $20 million project here. There's some stuff that's not included. We talked about some potential, softball fields, if that's something we wanted. Next steps, I'll let these guys go through it, but next steps are obviously starting to conduct a community survey, getting community engagement and feedback. And do we want to increase this? Do we have the latitude to do it or not? So Jeff, go ahead.
All right, so taking a look at the timeline, less than 4 months remains until the board will make a decision about an April referendum. So on one hand, it seems like plenty of time. On the other hand, we've got holidays in there and other things. So we've got quite a bit of work to do in the coming months. Hans mentioned working with school perceptions to create the survey and getting that issued, and then results coming back, reviewing them with you. As far as the teachers go, we've determined that, especially in this community, that community engagement starts with the teachers. If we can get the teachers on board, we get the community on board. So one of the steps we're taking is we're making arrangements to take a group of teacher leaders to 2 Nexus clients that are fairly close by, just right up 94, specifically at Greenfield School District, Greenfield Middle School, has confirmed to us that they'd welcome teachers on a site visit, most likely towards the end of a school day. And then also at Oak Creek School District, 2 elementaries there, Shepherd Hills and Cedar Hills, if you're familiar with those. So, we talked before, I think it was with one of the teacher groups, one of the teachers who's fairly new here said, how come we're not just demolishing this building and starting new? That's cost prohibitive, quite frankly. And we've got plenty of examples locally, especially at these 2 districts, where we've renovated to look like new. And so I think it's important to give them an idea of what this could look like with recent examples that were Nexus driven. Greenfield Middle School, I think the updates were made about 5 years ago. And at Oak Creek, they're fresh. they're new. So that's going to take place ideally within the month of October as a means to gain ultimately community support.
I see on the timeline here, it says design and implementation in 2022 to 2024. How long, if we did everything in this, how long will this construction base take?
Through the summer of 24.
So we would leave school and then come back to a completely different school?
No, the majority of the construction is gonna happen during the summer months.
Mm-hmm.
So, half would occur, some would occur in summer 22, but not much, most of the detailed design, because that's a 6 to 9 month process.
Yeah.
Then we bid everything out. Most is going to occur in the summers of 23 and the summer of 24.
Okay.
Hate to interrupt, got about.
I got it, AJ.
You
We're
got it,
good.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, if you could lock it up.
Yeah, we're all good.
Appreciate it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it could, again, depend, and we need to work with the district on what can they handle, because we'll move as fast as you'll allow us to, but we'll explain how it's gonna work, what the district has to do in terms of, what space you'll have access to and not have access to. That could mean maybe another year, another summer gets added to it, so it could be a lighter summer, but it could go into the fall, the end of summer 25.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of phasing that would have to go on, depending on what's actually passed.
Yeah, no, completely understandable. It's just, as you guys can imagine, when you renovate a home, it's disruptive to your home. So I'm only assuming renovating a school is even disruptive to the students, so.
Well, and what we try to do is, when we'll start taking the building apart, like the last month of school, it'll be interesting to the students. It won't be unsafe or anything, but, ceilings start coming out and some things, all equipment staged. The minute they're gone, the building is a construction zone. Then no one, for safety reasons, no one can be on site until we open it back up, which would be, second, third week of August. I mean, we'll use every single day.
Yep.
Okay. But we have to plan for summer school. How do we accommodate that? All those types of things. And that gets factored into the schedule.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, but then when they do come back, it's not like for the whole year, they're in a war zone.
Well, that's what I was like, wait a second, my house has been renovated all summer, so it's a little fresh in my mind right now.
No, it's, we would stage it so that when they come back, it may look like they're still, it isn't completely done, but it will look welcoming and it'll be safe and clean and all that.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes. Other questions? We know that it's late, so we want to be respectful of your time.
I am meeting with school perceptions tomorrow. Okay. Just so you guys know, first thing, our timeline was getting tight with them. So they are going to propose their first draft tomorrow. I have shared these documents that you guys shared with you guys. I think Jeff, you actually shared it right with them, and then also Lisa's documents that she shared with us today. So we're paying them to do that, right? So they're going to develop that survey for us, and then I'm meeting with them to kind of make that first draft tomorrow, and then hoping that end of October, we'll start looking at that for board approval for our October meeting, and then November getting it out and getting the final draft ready in mailboxes early November, results probably mid to end November.
And Jack, did we include some of those pictures of our known problem areas like the waterfall and stuff like that?
With school perceptions?
Yeah.
So that's what we're gonna work on tomorrow.
Awesome.
That'll be our first step with that stuff, yeah.
Pictures worth 1,000 words.
The other benefit of the school perception survey approach is because it gets mailed to every household in the district. So it kind of has a dual function. It's also an educational tool.
Mhm.
And, the district, kind of raising awareness, so.
100%. Well, and folks, like, there might be grandparents who haven't been in the school in a while because now all their grandkids are either out of high school or in high school. So they may not realize some of the updates that are now needed because last time they saw it, it was a new wing.
Yes, right. 10 years ago.
We went through a lot today. Hope
Thank
you
you
guys are
guys
more
for your
comfortable
time.
and confident in what we've developed over the last couple months with your admin team, with your teachers.
What, okay, and what we envision happening, if you would like to get back together, and you don't have to decide now, but if you'd like to get back together and, see this again, the second time, something, I would imagine you're a little saturated now, as well as tired.
Just a little.
But then, the idea is, if you look on here, we go out and get input from the community through surveys, through a number of community engagement events. We then synthesize that and bring all of that back to you. So you've got the survey data, you have all the input from the community, from the staff. So now you're able to make data-driven decisions on go, don't go, how big to go, how small to go, all that sort of thing. So you have a lot more data that'll be coming to you in the November, December timeframe.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Great job.
This is fantastic.
Dude.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. We do really need to say it's this is our job. You guys are being here till 9-ish at night. I mean, it's great. We really like it. We put so much time into all the detail. We have board members roll their shirt sleeves and get into it and ask the questions. It's just great. You're doing a great service for the community.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, I want to thank Nexus for their very informational presentation tonight. So we greatly do appreciate that. The time is now 9:14, and I will make a motion to adjourn our meeting. Seconded by Corey. So, roll call vote. Adam, aye. Stephanie?
Aye.
Sue?
Aye.
Mike is absent. Corey?
Aye.
So, motion carried 4-0. So, I just want to thank anyone who may have been tuning in tonight. And as always, you can always contact the board members on the board website.